Hi there, everyone. My name is Christian Eschbach, and today I am going to finally crack into some Led Zeppelin. So, I'm looking at Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti, my favorite Zeppelin album. But you're going to have one of two choices. You can either watch this just focusing on the music of the albums that originally made up Physical Graffiti, or you can watch the long-winded extended version where I get into all the details, including the bonus disc, all the artwork they did, everything, how it's all pieced together to go with this. It'll be a long-winded thing. So you'll have the choice. But this is the intro for both. So before I get into this, I do have to give you a little bit of a background with me and Led Zeppelin. This is the only Zeppelin album I own that is not a greatest hits or a box set. Okay. I did own Zeppelin 4 once upon a time. I traded it for the soundtrack for Shocker. If you want the story behind that, go watch the review for Shocker. Did that a couple episodes ago. But I owned the Zeppelin box set from very early on. I was very fortunate. My uncle bought it for me for Christmas one year. I had bugged and bugged and bugged for it for years for Christmas. My uncle one year picked it up for me. So I've actually had the benefit of having like one of the greatest collections of Zeppelin at my fingertips forever. I didn't feel a need to go out and buy the individual albums. So that's why Physical Graffiti is going to be the first one I cover, because I will only cover an album I have in its entirety. All right, so Led Zeppelin, we got Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, John Bonham. Okay? For the most spectacular musicians in their particular instrument, and I'm going to say Robert Plant's voice is definitely an instrument in this case. The way he does it, especially on certain songs and whatnot, and works within the band, stuff like that, it's just absolutely brilliant. This album in particular, I find, is this great experiment. It's wonderful. It is absolutely exceptional in its presentation. My only gripe with this album, and it happens on a lot of Zeppelin albums, is for the love of God, the song titles. I have the worst time memorizing Led Zeppelin song is which because of the damn song titles. It throws me off all the time. I'm horrible for it. And I will say, I like Zeppelin. I enjoy Zeppelin. I totally, once again, each member is a major influence to me in different ways. Like I will never be able to sing like Robert Plant. That's never going to happen. I'm never going to play guitar like Jimmy Page. But let me tell you, I have studied John Paul Jones bass lines and obviously John Bonham's drumming. You can't go play drums and not really listen to that and focus on that. But on the whole, like Zeppelin is not my go-to band. Just want to be open and upfront about everything. And when you name songs, stuff that has nothing to do with the song, or is an abstract word out of the entire song, it kind of throws you off sometimes. I have that complaint a lot with a lot of musicians. Rob Zombie's new album, which I'll eventually get into, is really driving me up the wall about that one, which is why I haven't done the review for it yet. Sorry, now I'm going on. So let's get into the music. We've got the first album. The one thing I love about the CD is they do as best as they can to replicate the album, as in, album 1 is disc 1, album 2 is disc 2, because it was originally a double album set. One thing I got to point out is one of the reasons it's a double album set is this collection of music is definitely an experiment and gratuitousness. Okay, it really is. Um, okay, so they kind of showed here how it would have been originally broken up. You got side one, side two. And to give you an idea, the shortest song between both of them is 4 minutes and 4 seconds. The longest song is 11 minutes and 8 seconds, and everything else kind of falls in between. So, the album opens up with Custard Pie. Chances are you've heard Custard Pie. It's a good tune. It's got a great kind of little bit of a boogie woogie shuffle to it. It's really kind of fun that way. It's not high on the big Zeppelin scale, it's not one of those ones that everybody goes, oh, that's the one I want to hear in concert. Yes, there are definitely fans of Custard Pie, and I do know fans of Custard Pie, but it's not a song that is for the masses or that the masses are necessarily going to recognize. If it does get played on the radio, it's because they're playing an excessively deep cut. You know what I mean? It's not that they're playing, a greatest hit. From there, and I mentioned that little shuffle, I want to point out that I love this kind of mini, I like to call it kind of a stumble shuffle that John Bonham likes to do when he gets these kind of little shuffles going sometimes. But it's like a warm up. It's not meant to be a real shuffle. And the reason why I mentioned this is how the Rover, which is the next track, opens up. And that's right before it kicks into a straight ahead rock song, and beautiful rock song. But it's much like Custard Pie, fantastic album tracks, great album cuts. They're not mainstream songs, at least not anymore. They definitely would have been much more mainstream back in the 70s. Like when this album came out, those two songs both might have got radio play. Not a lot because the length of them, Custard Pie being 4 minutes 15 seconds, and the Rover on here saying that it clocks in at 5 minutes and 59 seconds. So basically, the Rover would have gotten on the radio if someone has to go for a pee break. Back in the days of vinyl, that's how they used to time, certain songs. If they knew they were going to need a pee break, you put on a slightly longer song so you had a little more time to go to the bathroom. But that was only on rock stations that were willing to play longer songs, you know what I mean? And that takes me to the longest running song on this album, clocking in at 11 minutes and 8 seconds, In My Time of Dying. In My Time of Dying is really, really cool, in the sense that, yes, it's a long song, and most of the time, long songs will drive people over the wall, but In My Time of Dying almost sounds like it's 3 individual tracks to me. It's got this great kind of arc it goes through. It starts off kind of nice and slow, and then, it'll pick up as it goes. It gets this great little riff going on, and to me, it just kind of gets a little heavier and a little better as it goes. And, it's got so much vibe and flavor to it. And really, you can dance to this, man. You can get a groove onto this. And you start nice and slow and just work your way up to a nice little groove, man. And there's no reason why you can't. And I just really could not stress how good of a tune that In My Time of Dying really is. And I love the exploration on this album with it and the way that the band really plays with it and gets into it and goes with it. And honestly, given a choice between listening to In My Time of Dying or listening to Stairway, I'd rather listen to In My Time of Dying. It's longer, sure, but it's a lot more fun and it's a lot more energetic and it just has a lot more movement and groovement to it. So after that, we get into Houses of the Holy. Now, I want to point out the whole second side of what would have been the original vinyl or the second half of the CD is probably some of Zeppelin's greatest music ever released. If not quite possibly, definitely Two of these songs are top 5 songs for me for Zeppelin. 100% without a doubt, top 5. And quite possibly they're honestly top 2 Zeppelin songs for me, but I'm not there yet. First song is Houses of the Holy, a song that was not ready for. I forget what the whole story is with Houses of the Holy. I forget why it ended up on this album instead of being on Houses of the Holy. It was either it wasn't ready for the one or they needed it to fill the other, so they took it from the one, or they were recording a whole crap load of stuff in this time period. If you actually look at how much stuff Zeppelin was pumping out throughout the very tail end of the 60s through most of the 70s, it was insane. And like, you're talking double albums, stuff like that. Okay, so House of the Holy is this great, fantastic song, regardless of the whole backstory behind it. Great song. It's one of the shortest songs on here, which is meant it was like the one that got the most radio play for the longest time. Fun, bouncy, just I don't. It's so uplifting. It really is, and it's just fantastic. And there's so much. To me, it feels like there's so much love and passion and energy in this song. You know, just such jubilance. I want to say. And that brings us to Trampled Underfoot. Oh my God. Okay. So, Trampled Underfoot, as much as I want to say is like my all time favorite Zeppelin song, it's not. It's my second all time favorite Zeppelin song. It really is. Just that everybody, when they think of John Paul Jones, always thinks of him as the bassist. Okay. And what people don't realize is all the keyboard organ parts, that's all him too. Every last one of them's him, you know, basically. You know, it might be the odd one, maybe, that doesn't, you know, just to prove me wrong. But that that's all done up on the keyboards, and it's just killer. And the way that he leads that song and gets it moving is just spectacular. John Paul Jones, in a way, is the unsung hero of Zeppelin. Realistically, you know, he's the bassist, he's the keyboardist, and not that he was doing both at the same time like Geddy Lee, but you know, sometimes a guy's got to do what a guy's got to do on certain songs. But Trampled Underfoot is just such a powerful song, and just gets you up and gets you going, and just fantastic. It's also one of the controversial Zeppelin songs, but I'm leaning on the Zeppelin side of that. And that takes us into my favorite Zeppelin song. Now, my favorite Zeppelin song is a bit of a cliche, but at least it's not Stairway to Heaven. Cashmere. Da-da-da, 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 da-da. How can you not love this song? I've mentioned my playing bass and guitar, or bass and drums, and not playing guitar much. I did take a lot of time to study guitar. I'm just very bad at playing guitar chords. That's what it boils down to. I'm really bad at switching chords up. So I spent a lot of time studying it though, and you have to study Kashmir. If you're a guitarist, it is fundamental that you study this, not just because of the chords that are used, but because of the open tuning. Oh yeah, the open tuning on this, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head here. That's what I got the side of the screen here for. But the way that it's played and the chord formations with the tuning and stuff like that, it's just absolutely fantastic. I mean, there is just a real education in studying the guitar work on this album. Or not the, well, the album, yeah, for sure. I mean, studying the music on this album in general. But the guitar work on Kashmir is just something spectacular that should be studied just for the basic fundamentals of it. And that brings us to the end of the first album, or in this case, the end of the first disc. So let's flip it over to the next album. So we get to the second disc, and I look at the second disc as two completely different kind of albums almost. And the reason why I say that is what would be side A is like sex, good sex, not bad sex. Not fast, aggressive. Really good session of sex. A little love making, a little fucking. You know, but a good session. Definitely some foreplay, major foreplay, not just for the dude. Okay, and the second side is everything else that was kind of left over after all is said and done. Because when you look at the first disc, the first disc kind of starts off with this nice collection of album tracks. Then it goes into like these three amazing monster of rocks tracks. Then you get to this next one, okay, and you start off with In the Light. In the Light has this beautiful organ intro mixed with the guitars in there, I believe, as well. So like organ keyboard thing going on. And it sounds absolutely wonderful. It's just this great build-up. A little long-winded, but it goes with... It's only going to be long-winded for people that... going back to what I mentioned about this half of the album being very sex, the opening is cunnilingus. It is. That's what it is to me. The opening of this album, with the way that it is played, it is cunnilingus done right. Now, you go from there, and as the song builds up, it gets a little heavy, and then it gets soft, and then it gets heavy, and then it gets soft. And when you think about In the Light, it's this kind of representation of the, going through the light and dark, okay? But musically, it's this great build up and ease off and build up and ease off and build up and ease off. Perfect. The rhythms, the timings, the way that you just completely swoon through the whole thing. And you don't realize that, 8 minutes and 47 seconds has gone by the end of it, because you've done it perfectly. That a perfect amount of passion. Then you get into Bronniar, which is Jimmy Page and the guitar, and that is it. It is a great little instrumental piece, great little guitar piece. Sounds beautiful. It's, taking a moment or two before you start getting a little more passionate again, which brings us into Down by the Sea. Down by the Sea, wonderful, sweet, romantic, caress, holds, swooning. Just, there's a great romance to Down by the Sea, and the way it flows and it moves, and it's just wonderful. I find that the song drags on a little bit at the end. It's almost like they weren't sure how to end it, so they just kind of decided to go with a jam, knowing that if they played it live, that's what they would do. They just jam it out until they were done, kind of thing. And that goes into 10 Years Gone, which finishes out the first side. And 10 Years Gone gets more into that wonderful build up with a climactic kind of end. Out of all the songs, 10 Years Gone is probably the one that I always kind of lose track of the most. But part of the reason for that is not one I ever really listened to prior to picking up the Physical Graffiti album. Fantastic tune, though. It really is. I'm downplaying it a bit, but that is due to the fact that I love it when I'm listening to the album. I don't really think about it when I'm not listening to the album. Okay, so we get into the second side of the second album, and this one's just kind of like a collection of songs. There's no real kind of vibe to it, and it's a great collection of songs, but compared to kind of everything else that was on this album, you kind of wonder a little bit. It starts off with Night Flight. Night Flight is the one song on this entire collection that I never listened to. It's a good straight ahead kind of tune. I don't listen to it really. When it's playing, sure, okay, no problem. Why skip it? It's a good tune. Never go out of my way to listen to it. However, Wonton Song, yeah, oh my god, this song's got a great boogie to it. Wonderful boogie. It makes you want to get up and dance. It's got vibe, it's got feeling, it's got something different to it, a little passion to it. I love Wonton Song. Great tune. And speaking of boogie, that goes into Boogie with Stu. Boogie and Stew, another song, great boogie. Two completely different types of boogies, though. Wonton Song's got that great electric hard rock boogie that you kind of expect from Zeppelin, right? Boogie with Stew is an acoustic kind of boogie, man. It's stripped back. It's a bunch of guys just kind of stripped back and going away on it like you're listening to a band on a porch playing, like an old blues band, I want to say Kentucky blues band or something like that. Not necessarily Kentucky blues. That's even not necessarily the right idea because I'm thinking older than that, but that's the vibe. I wish there was more prominent jug blowing in this song. Honestly. Yeah, folks, I said it. And speaking of that kind of, on the front porch, country band kind of playing, country blues band kind of playing, that takes you in a Black Country Woman, which has got the same sound again. And it's a great song the way it's going on. It's just got this great country-esque old school blues, before electric was even invented almost, or at least electric instruments were invented kind of thing, Fantastic song. Absolutely love it. Sounds weird mixed into this whole entire collection of great experimental electronic rock, but that's what makes it work so perfect on here, It's this great kind of juxtaposition to everything else that's going on. And then you finish it off with Sick Again, which is a good tune. It's a good tune. It's a great album cut. Not necessarily the album or the song I would have used to close out this collection. I might have tweaked with the song orders a little bit. And the only reason why I say that is if you're one of my regular viewers, you know how much the way an album finishes matters to me. And Sick Again, while being a really good tune, doesn't finish out this double album collection with the justice it deserves. Maybe Wonton Song would have been better, I think. Honestly, then they would have finished the show with a good boogie if they wanted to go that way. Realistically, the first album finishes it out the best with Cashmere. You cannot finish out an album better than you can finish out with Cashmere. So if they wanted to finish it out perfectly, they should have put Cashmere at the end of album 2. But album 2, were it not for the fact that I think the first side is so much the rhythm of great sex, of good love and passionate sex, I would say that album 2 was just kind of a collection of songs left over the whole way around, that's sitting around after all this time that they've been, recording and whatnot. And I do know that that is part of it, and that is how things went. But hey, it is what it is. And, now that my cats decided to make an entrance, I'm going to use that as my moment to wrap up the first 2 albums and my views on the first 2 albums. So overall, this is my favorite Zeppelin album. It is not necessarily Zeppelin's best album. I have a debate with people about that over what Zeppelin's best album is. I think that Zeppelin's best album is actually probably Zeppelin 2. But that also depends on where you lean on stuff. And I only say Zeppelin 2 because of the songs that are on it. Zeppelin 4, many people will say, is their best album, and that's understandable as well. I think a lot of that comes from the first 4 songs off of Zeppelin 4 that I think are the most highly overrated. Well, three of the four of the first four are most highly overrated Zeppelin songs. But to me, this is a great album with a great collection and a great mix. You know, you can take both albums, and if you've got, you know, like I'm listening on CD. That's how my format is always thought of as CD, because that's how I grew up listening to stuff. And you can mix, you know, randomize these two CDs, you know, put it so it shuffles back and forth between them or whatnot. And it's a fantastic mix to go between them. There's no wrong way to listen to this album. You know, listen to it properly, listen it into a mix. It's fantastic. It works no matter what. There's no bad way. There's no bad song really on this album either. You know, Night Flight is the closest I get to calling a bad song on here, and it's a great tune still. You can't go wrong with any of the songs on this album. So, pick it up. It is worth it. After this, I am going into the long extended mix. So I am going to do two different closings. This is the first one. Leave me your comments. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, you know, hit the subscribe button to get notifications when a new episode comes out. And peace, love, and take care.